We're going to start with the Saturday 4:30 game, the curtain jerker, if you will, for the playoff games. And we got the Chargers taking on the Texans, the 4 seed taking on the 5 seed, which is traditionally a very interesting matchup, I would say, on both conferences. With the Chargers as the 5 seed favored -3 and a -150 money line over the Texans at +130. So, and we're taking a look for the betting fiends out there too. The total is 43.5, started at 44.5. Looks like mostly 50-50 for the Chargers to win outright, a little bit of a favor for the Chargers. So I'll let you go and go first and just tell me your thoughts on this game and what you think of those numbers, especially with the home team and the division winner being the underdog.
Yeah, it's always surprising whenever they give a division winner an underdog position. It almost makes me feel like they want everybody to bet the Texans, and they're just like, you know what, the Chargers can sneak something here, and they don't want to lose the house if the Chargers do. I don't know if that's the case or if it's just one of those situations where maybe they're looking at the Texans and as banged up as they are, just coming in here kind of reeling, if you will, especially obviously the tragic loss of Tank Dell there to injury at the end of the season. But yeah, it's, the Chargers, man, that's a tough team to play, and they do it well in the playoff. They play playoff football well, which is grind it out, run it down your throat. Oh, and by the way, Justin Herbert has a rocket for an arm and can take the top off of any defense, along with Quentin Johnston out there on the outside, who has really stepped up. And Ladd McConkey is not a receiver to sleep on this year. You talked about it in the lead up into the season and going to draft day, how good he could be. I got to watch him at Georgia for 4 years, and I wish I never did, because he tore up Auburn every single time they played. But no, honestly, this is going to be a fun game from top to bottom. It's competitive, and it's what I want to see from a Saturday game versus maybe some of these other matchups I really care less of. This year, not so bad, but in the past, we've had some pretty bad Saturday matchups. But this one, I'm actually pretty excited for. But yeah, Texans being a dog is kind of surprising.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm actually more surprised the Chargers aren't favored by more. And I think part of that is because the last time we saw Justin Herbert and the recent Chargers in the playoffs, they choked a 20-point lead to an AFC South division winner. So that might have something to do with it. But do you remember the last time the Texans looked good when you watched them? Like the last time they just looked good? I'm not even talking about winning. I'm just saying actually looked good.
Well, according to our good friend and Texas fans and football guy, Hector Flores, if you guys never watched Hector over on Insert Name FC, go do that. Not now, but later. But he's a diehard Texans fan, and his biggest thing is exactly that. He complains every week that this team is miserable to watch, and they're giving him a heart attack, and he is not loving any minute of watching this Texans team play, other than the fact they won and they're in the playoffs. Like, that's what he enjoys. But the rest of it, he's like, I can't stand this. They look so bad. They just look like they're streaking out wins. And that kind of sums it up. Like, I really don't know the last time the Texans were that team. It feels like it's been since like week 1, because week 2 was against the Colts, and that was like a nail biter.
Week 1 was the Colts.
Sorry. So yeah, there you go. Not even week 1, week 0, maybe week 1 of the preseason. Week 0, maybe week 1 against the Colts. It was a tough one. So
the only game I could think of where they looked like a team where it's like, oh snap, was when they played the Bills in October when Josh Allen was weirdly erratic and they still survived by 3. When Josh Allen was like 9 of 31 or something. It's their pass rush with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson's been outstanding all year. The defense overall has actually been really good. Problem is, like, offensively, they've looked so not even stagnant. They've just looked completely out of sync, especially with what we saw last year. We thought they'd build on that. Obviously, Nico Collins being out of the lineup for a chunk, that does not help. Stephon Diggs going down does not help as well. Like, obviously, injuries don't help. But the offensive line has turned into, I won't say turnstiles, and I won't make a border joke here, but it has not looked very good. They have let a lot of people hit CJ Stroud. He's had to leave games multiple times. He came back in usually, but he's had to leave for a couple of plays here and there. We've seen a lot more Davis Mills than I think any Texans fan wanted to see this year, out both in throwaway time and in real time. They got in. It feels like those old NFC South ones that they get in at like 7-9, like the Seahawks that got in at 8-1 or whatever it was, like those older ones where they got in
NFC West.
Exactly, they got in because of the division they were in. Someone had to win it, and the AFC South is terrible, as we could tell by looking at the draft order. We don't have to look very far to see how terrible it's been. So I'll go ahead and jump into the prediction. Chargers -3 feels like a safe pick here. I will take Chargers -3. I'll take that -150 money line. We're not touching the over and the under because the Chargers historically have kept throughout the season have kept it close until you bet on them. Then they score 30 on their own. because as you mentioned, Justin Herbert can still light it up with the best of them. Quentin Johnson, 190 yards almost to end the season. Okay. Just random deep, big touchdown guy. He's basically what he is. Hector's football guy, Quentin's touchdown guy. Lad McConkey, if he didn't have to deal with the likes of Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., he'd be in conversation for like rookie receiver of the year. And if we weren't, having Brock Bowers and Jane Daniels be freaks taking over the rookie of the year by themselves, he'd be in that conversation. J.K. Dobbins, a good offensive line, the best defense in scoring defense in football, minus what the Bucs did to them 1 week. But even despite that, still the best scoring defense in football. So there's a lot to like. And weirdly enough, a first-year head coach with the Chargers, but he has more playoff experience than the coach who's been with the Texans. So it's kind of funny how that works out considering Harbaugh's previous tenure. So I'm going to take the Chargers. I'm going to take the -3 or the money line. I'll take either one of them, but I do like if you're just a field goal. I feel pretty good with that, especially some books might give you -2.5 for basically the same thing. So the field goal gets it for you. I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. I think they cover.
Yeah, I would have said the Texans if they were fully healthy. A couple things that scare me there is Shaq Mason not participating in practice today. That's terrifying for the Texans. On the flip side of things, for the Chargers, Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson both participated today. So there goes my concern for an offensive line on the Chargers. And I gotta say, the Chargers' offensive line is one of the guiding lights for this whole team, for that team, and really they should be lauded more than they are. And I feel like they're being overlooked because it's the Chargers, it's the 5 seed in the AFC, not a 1 seed. Plus, we've had some crazy, records for some teams this year, so they just kind of get overlooked. But what the Chargers are doing is guided by their offensive line and guided by their run game. And well, guess what? Their run game and their offensive line are healthy, so it's going to be a tough one for the Texans. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to go with the spread here. I'm going to go to straight money line, -150 for the Chargers. I don't think they need the 3-point buffer here. I think just going with the Chargers -150 is the way to go. It's a 52.8% win outright favorite. I think it should be. You mentioned it before. It should be higher. As much as I was hoping the Texans, I could convince myself on the Texans, I didn't. So yeah, for me, the Chargers -150 money line in this one. The 5 seed, I guess, gets an upset over the 4 seed despite the injuries and everything.
And despite being favored, I guess, like in a way, however we want to word it, it's very, very fun. But also say, I think the Texans have been good against the run, but they've been better against the pass. So I think the Chargers' ability and stubbornness to run the ball with J.K. Dobbins, with Kamani Vidal, with Jim Harbaugh's guy, Hayden Haskins, who I wish I would have known was going to be on the team, I would have immediately picked him in fantasy right away just and stored him because that was just sitting in there waiting to happen. Oh, yeah. And Zeke, your boy Zeke's now on there too. So you got a nice little Ohio State, Michigan blend in there, and Zeke's about to go off like 150 for some random reason now.
Zeke in Texas, he's a different player when he plays in Texas. No matter where it is, whether it was in college, whether it's in the pros, he always played better in the state of Texas.
He plays better in the state of Texas when his home is not in the state of Texas.
Yeah, when he's not playing for Dallas the second time around, he does a lot better. So yeah, that'll be funny. Probably, honestly, just knowing to spite me as a Cowboys fan, who scored 2 touchdowns just to drive the dagger in a little extra hard.
Spiting you as a Cowboys fan is something that I think a lot of these teams do on purpose, and it might not be entirely your fault. You could blame Jerry for that one, which I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point for sure. Don't you?
I will.
Next up, we got the Steelers taking on the Ravens in prime time on Prime Video with the Ravens a -9.5 point favorite, -550 for the money line. Steelers +380. Total set at 45.5, open at 46.5. 72% for the Ravens to win outright. And this one's kind of interesting because it is the polar opposite of the matchup we just talked about. The away team, when was the last time the Steelers looked good? Well, the last time they played the Ravens, arguably, which they won. The problem is they played the Ravens in between that time, and they lost by double digits. Whereas the Ravens have been, I think cooking would be an understatement at this point. Like they've dished out the filet mignon with the perfectly coiffed mashed potatoes and gravy with some asparagus on the side and a glass of wine. They've been on fire the last few weeks. What they did to the Texans, we mentioned. What they did to the Steelers, as we just mentioned. What they did last week to the Browns. Like what they've just continued to do. Really, since that first Steelers loss, they've been outstanding. I'm going to ask you, though, which one do you think this is going to be closer to? Is it going to be closer to the second one when they played or closer to their first matchup where the Steelers were able to carve that one out in a very tight, gritty AFC North classic competition?
Yeah, I said about the Chargers, and I'm going to say it here again about the Steelers. They like to grind it out, and in playoff football, that is all you got to do is grind them out, outlast the other team. I think this is going to be a lot closer to the first matchup, where it's going to be a close game, probably decided in that end of the fourth quarter. I don't think this is a blowout type of game. I've been wrong about the Steelers in the playoffs before. I was wrong about the Steelers this entire season. So I'm going to go ahead and say I apologize, Steelers fans. I was wrong. I've been on a Steelers show before, and I was nice then. I'm going to be nice again and say the Steelers, I was wrong. My apologies. But no, I think this is going to be a lot closer to what you saw in the first matchup and the second matchup. This is just a game where you look at the playoffs, how cold it's going to be in Baltimore right now. It is not a fun place to play, and this is an AFC North grinded out matchup that, despite all the positives that have been going the Ravens' favor, they got beat by the Browns in a matchup that was going to be very similar weather-wise to what they're going to face the Steelers, and it's safe to say the Steelers are a better team than the Browns objectively, and so it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes. I think depends on who can get their passing game going more efficiently. Russell Wilson is not a guy you want to really tempt in the playoffs to get hot, because as much as I have, again, given him the stick right recently, he's a playoff winner. He wins in the playoffs. And that's something that the Steelers haven't had as a quarterback in a while. And I think there are times where he can do something and be impactful and make plays. On the flip side, you have two-time MVP, potentially three-time MVP Lamar Jackson on the other side. And it's just a matter of him getting efficient and getting into the offense and making the right reads when he actually has a receiver open, because these corners aren't going to give him much. But I think it's going to be a fun matchup, top to bottom. I think this is going to be one where you look at, like, it should be more competitive than the plus 380, minus 550 odds that it's given you.
This is interesting because when you try and look at it, like you make a checklist or anything like that, I can't find a reason for the Steelers to have a chance. I really can't. Like, you look at their offense, what is it dependent on? Basically, Russell Wilson connecting on moonballs. Like, all their efficiency numbers out the gate. Their ability to stay on the field out the gate. Their ability to run the ball, mediocre. Their ability to throw the ball anything besides a 9 route, good luck. Defensively, they are pretty stout. They do sometimes get a little leaky. The Ravens, we already know, I think they have the most yards per game in NFL history, or they're in the top 5 for it this year. Most rushing yards per game in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken, are pretty close to it. Like, Lamarvelous, 40 touchdowns, less than 5 picks, ridiculous. Derrick Henry, second in the league in rushing, ridiculous. Zay Flowers, if he's able to play, Pro Bowl receiver, surprised he was, very good receiver nonetheless. Mark Andrews, like 6 consecutive games with a touchdown at the end of the year after we thought he was washed for the first month and a half.
After I said, hey, don't just drop this guy and let it go. Yeah, I dropped him in a few leagues, and I regret that one.
It's okay. Your team was cursed from the get. It was bound to happen. Isaiah Likely is still out there. Rashad Bateman's resurgence. Every single checkbox points to the Ravens, except for the kind of what you hit the nail on the head. You have Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson in the playoffs in an AFC North matchup as underdogs. And then the Ravens, who in the playoffs, minus last year against Houston, it's been a rough go for the most part. I'm still going to take the Ravens to win, but I do think the Steelers will find a way to cover minus 9.5. They'll lose like 21-17, something like that. Like, they'll lose. They'll probably won't even be that close, but they'll find a way to make it close late. Like, I think somehow they'll connect on a moon ball to George Pickens, where Russell Wilson throws it straight to the sky and it randomly drops like an IED on Call of Duty right into his hands, like 40 yards downfield, and it makes no sense. But I'm going to still say the Ravens will find a way to win. Lamar, Derrick Henry. What's interesting is, if I'm not mistaken, Derrick Henry has never had over 100 yards against the Steelers. So that'll be interesting if they are able to continue that and mitigate him as well, especially considering Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr., they got dudes on the defensive side of the ball. But if they're going to win, they have to score on defense, I think. Or take the ball away and give the Steelers the offense, give them the ball basically in the red zone. Like, they have to more or less create a scoring opportunity on their own. So I'm going to take the Ravens to win, but I'm going to take the Steelers to find a way to cover that -9 or that plus 9.5. That's a lot of points for how these two teams are traditionally close. Even though I know there is no reason for that, it's that this is literally, I got a feeling, just based on how these two always match up. And you have Mike Tomlin, Russell Wilson, playoff situation, Baltimore, chilly. It makes no sense, and I can't give you a good reason, but I'm going to still take it. I'm going to say they cover plus 9.5.
Ooh, wow.
Still losing. Like, the Ravens will be in no jeopardy of losing, Just the final score will be within 10 points.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I don't know, man. So I'm kind of leaning towards you. I'll be honest. I kind of do think the Steelers can cover the 9.5, and the reason why is you mentioned, well, the Steelers only connect on nines. Well, guess what? The Ravens suck at covering nines. They're, for some reason, their DBs lose track of guys running up the seams and running outside down the sidelines. I don't know why. Does not make sense. It should be the simplest coverage when you're playing a umbrella coverage. But you know what? They do it. It never fails. Somebody blows Marlon Humphrey off the line, and just Marlon Humphrey's like, somebody else has got that, and nobody else has that. And that's what scares me with the Ravens of picking them outright or picking them to cover. I don't know. And then also playoff covering for this type of a point spread just always feels extreme. 3 to 5, I'm like, all right, a little more comfortable. 9.5, it just feels, again, it feels like they're baiting you. They want you to take the Ravens to cover, and they all know the Steelers aren't going to, or are going to be able to cover the 9.5. And so I think with you, like you, I'm picking the Steelers to cover. But for me, I think it's closer to the 8 and 9 point range. I just don't think it covers the 9.5. So if this drops to like a 7.5 by game time, then I change my answer. But I'm going to say Steelers cover for now, but Ravens would win it outright in my eyes. It's too close to tell though. As far as that 9.5 is just a weird spread for this matchup.
The Ravens will, I think we're both ignorant. The Ravens should clearly win, but they're not a team I trust to cover when they have a big spread like that. I know they've been rolling the last few weeks. I know they've covered the last few weeks, but I know they even covered against the Browns when it's 20 points, and I'm still bitter about that. But that's more because your boy Bailey Zappi hates us than what I think we'll see here. So I'm going to say, we're going to say Ravens will win comfortably, but Steelers will keep it annoying. Speaking of spreads that you don't like, we got your boy Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills 9-point favorites with the exact same odds at minus plus 380 and minus 550. The over set at 47.5. So I'm going to start with you. How do you feel about your boy Bo Nix jumping right from the college football playoff almost to the NFL playoff?
Yeah, good for him. We talked about him being probably the most NFL ready rookie coming in. You know, he had the highest.
Hard to do that for you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. The dude's 30 years old walking into the NFL. I'm just kidding, obviously. He's, 24? But still. He reminds me of what quarterbacks used to be coming into the league, is the best way I can describe it, where they were seasoned in college and then brought in. Obviously, he had a whole extra season under his belt, but he was still seasoned in college to come in and be ready for a lot of this. And let's not kid ourselves. He played a lot of big games in college. His freshman year, he played against Justin Herbert in the kickoff game, and it went into a last-second play into the end zone to win the game against an Oregon team at that point in time, which was favored to get into the playoffs. And then continue that all throughout his career at Auburn and then into Oregon. He does know how to play in these games. Unfortunately for him, he might be going up as one of the hottest teams and hottest quarterbacks right now, and Josh Allen. And it's like, well, as good as you've done this season, good luck, kid. Because here's MVP candidate Josh Allen, who seems to be playing the most efficient football he's played in a couple years. What are you going to do now? Like, how is this team going to take this on? And this is in Buffalo again. You talk about Baltimore being the weather what it is. Buffalo is going to be right in Buffalo's favor. And Bo Nix is a Southern boy, and then he played in Oregon. He didn't exactly play in the most wintry and blustery of conditions like you're going to experience in Buffalo. And so it's going to be interesting to see. But good for him for getting here. I don't know if he's ready to keep going yet. I don't think this team is ready to keep going yet, as good as they've played. I don't know if the Broncos are ready to try to beat down the Buffalo Bills in round one here.
I got to say, we talked about it. We liked Bo Nix more than a lot of other people did coming out of the draft. We still didn't necessarily put him as a top 3 quarterback, but we all said, you and I especially, were like, he's good. Like, he's very good still. We weren't calling him Bo Picks like everyone else does. You coined the phrase the Bo Nix experience, but that doesn't mean that we both thought it was a good fit for him. I think him and Sean Payton are a perfect click. He runs that offense like a surgeon, unlike the Sean Payton and Russell Wilson experiment, which was just doomed. That's the only way to put it, really, necessarily.
There's too much ego for the Russell Wilson experiment.
Like, that had no chance to work. Cortland Sutton has been a little revived, it feels like, as well. Marvin Mims has been sensational. Even with Javonte Williams, he hasn't quite been as outstanding as we had hoped for coming off the injury a couple of years ago. He's still good. Like, they're still finding ways to win. The offensive line, led by your boy Quinn Miners, is still really solid.
Oh, That one of the best guards in the NFL game today.
Well paid for it too, absolutely.
Yeah.
But defensively, my goodness, have they been when they're on, they are outstanding. We already did the little part of the episode where you talked about your boy Nick Bonito, finally proving you right from the short a couple years ago, what the kind of impact he could have. Patrick Surtain, Defensive Player of the Year. Don't at me. If it's not him, it's a robbery. I don't need TJ Watt crying that he didn't get it this year. It is clearly and effectively. You look at what he's done. He has like I'm not saying Revis 09 stats. That's a little outrageous. But what he's done when he's played these receivers, kept Jamar Chase under wraps, T. Higgins, like every single person he's played, he's pretty much clamped up. He has been absolutely sensational so far. So if he's not Defensive Player of the Year, I don't know who you give it to at this point. Like I know TJ Watt's there, I know Myles Garrett, I know all of that, but he has been sensational the entire season. He's Defensive Player of the Year. Even against Jamar Chase, the Triple Crown winner, out of 43 snaps against him, 3 receptions for 27 yards, 0 touchdowns. He's been absolutely incredible. So just having him on the field gives you so much you can do defensively. He shuts down an entire whatever side of the field you want to put him on. He shuts it down completely. For a comparison, his numbers compared to Stephon Gilmore in 2019, the last corner to win Defensive Player of the Year. Gilmore 101 targets, Surtain 51. Yards allowed, Gilmore 599, Surtain 253. Interceptions, Surtain 4 on 51 targets, Gilmore 6 on 101 targets. Yards per completion, 8 for Surtain, Gilmore 11. That's not a knock against Gilmore whatsoever. That's how damn good Patrick Surtain has been. That's Defensive Player of the Year, and this rant is exclusively for me to say the Broncos will cover +9. I don't know how they'll do it. The Bills should be favored by every metric possible, but I think the defense will find a way to keep it just close enough that they'll annoy Josh Allen to where it'll stay close and then Allen will finish it late. Especially if Amari Cooper doesn't play. He hasn't been practicing necessarily, and he's kind of a game time decision. So we'll see if he plays. Maybe I'm a little less on it just because that's a really good receiver who, if you put him opposite Surtain, he will cook. But I really like Denver's defense, and I like Bo Nix a lot. I do think Josh Allen's the MVP. That team has been clicking. They're firing. Best top 3 offensive line in football. Good defense, not elite, but a good opportunistic defense that makes plays. Von Miller playing his old team should be fun, but I'm going to say that Broncos find a way to cover +9. If you can get +9.5, even better, honestly. Or if you can get +10.5, if you go to the all spreads, maybe you can get +10.5 at like -120 or something. Like if you can find it, I like 10.5 better, but I still like them to cover 9. I think it's 21-27, something like that. I think the Bills will win this game, but Denver's they're a live team in this one. They're not the worst team in the playoffs like you see here with some 7 seeds over the years. Like they're very live in this game. I don't think they will win. I don't think it'll be close until the final score, kind of like what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's fair. It's funny. You mentioned Defensive Player of the Year. First of all, there's only been 2 Defensive Player of the Years since 2010. Troy Polamalu in 2010, which, by the way, the year before was also a defensive back, I should say. There's been 2 defensive backs since 2010, 3 if you go to 2009. There should be a 4th this year, whether it be Patrick Surtain or whether it goes to I can't think of his name right now, out of Green Bay, former Giant, ironically.
Xavier McKinney.
Thank you. Leading the league in picks. One of the 2 needs to win it. I don't care which one, but it needs to be a DB this year. Anyways, I say that to say, what's funny about the Broncos here, and you talk about them being the worst team here, is you're keeping the Triple Crown out for the receivers. Like, this team did enough to get to the playoffs, and it took everything from the Bengals and a Triple Crown winner at receiver, by the way, first time since Sterling Sharp in 92, to not get it, not make it the playoffs as a Triple Crown winner, which is crazy. But yeah, it's absolutely insane to think that the Broncos are being considered the worst team in the playoffs, because they're not. They're not even close, but they are susceptible to get got. And usually when they're going against tougher teams, what ends up happening is they tend to get down early and then close the gap late, and then they come back late. I mean, let's not forget the Chiefs game was a blocked field goal away from the Chiefs losing to the Broncos. And I think we can all say that's the best team in the AFC right now. And Buffalo, man, that's a tough team to go up against. But when you're weighing the 2 here, there's an opportunity for the Broncos to sneak in and get a win here. Am I going to pick them? No. Am I going to pick them to cover the spread? No. And it feels blasphemous to say that, but I do think this is a 10-point game here. I do think this is a touchdown field goal type of difference. The Broncos have struggled with field goals, and at times their offense just seems to fall off. And as good as Estime has been as running back for kind of filling in between McMillan and Javonte Williams, like I don't think he's the answer in Buffalo. It's just going to depend on if Buffalo can get their own run game going. But for me, I don't think the Broncos cover. I do think the Bills can win this outright by 10 or more, just with the way Josh Allen's been playing, especially as of late, and how much he loves to play in the snow, it seems. He plays even better. And it's a first-time playoff game for Bo Nix. As much as I said he's ready to play in these games, I don't think he's that ready to play in Buffalo in his first game. So, yeah, give me Buffalo to cover outright. So, yeah, either taking Buffalo with the -9 or taking Buffalo outright, either one I'm okay with. So that's where I'm going.
Absolutely. I think if the Bills are up like 10-0 in the first quarter, scrap everything I said. If they jump on them kind of like what the Ravens did to them, Denver's cooked. I think they're going to keep it annoyingly close early, then late Bills will pull away a little bit. But I agree with you. If they jump on them, it's a wrap pretty quickly. That's MVP 17 over there. You can't mess around too with him. So
I don't think he's the MVP this year, but that's just because I do believe the stats tell a different tale. But I digress. It's not that episode today.
I will say the stats last year told a different episode too. I will go.
I totally agree, and I said the same thing last year.
Which is why I hate this conversation, which is why you can't just always give it to a quarterback when the stats say it's Saquon Barkley this year and was CMC last year.
Yeah.
Everyone thought we were about to have a Lamar Josh Allen argument there, but we're both agreeing there that the guy that's playing in this next game is where we were going with this.
The point I was alluding to with corners and defensive player of the year was also the same as quarterback and MVP. It's a defensive lineman, an outside linebacker award for defensive player of the year. It's a quarterback award for MVP, unfortunately.
And if they ever got off their high horse, we'd actually have those two guys that we talked about that could be pulling home some hardware in this next game. As we have the Green Bay Packers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Could be Defensive Player of the Year Xavier McKinney in that conversation. Versus could be MVP Saquon Barkley. Which, by the way, this means the Triple Crown winner is not going to get any hardware because they're going to give it to Saquon Barkley when it should be Saquon's MVP. Jamar Chase's Offensive Player of the Year. Whatever. Not that episode. We'll complain about the episode.
Don't worry. That's a whole episode of complaints to come.
Oh, it will happen too, but right now it is showing Eagles -5.5-point favorites. Opened as Eagles -3.5, but with Jalen Hurts practicing today, I believe. That's when that number jumped up because there was concern about Jalen Hurts playing. But it looks like he should be good to go, barring any tomfoolery in the next couple of days. I mean, the practice on Wednesday for a Sunday game is a pretty good sign. Packers +200, Eagles -240, 45.5, and a rematch of the Week 1 Friday night game in Brazil. This one played in the Greater Continental 48, so we don't have to worry about that this time. But Kelcey, how do you feel about a team that you really dislike playing against the Eagles?
I see what you did there. But no, this is a fun game, and this is going to be a completely different type of game than we saw in Brazil. From the standpoint of both of these teams are different. They have figured a lot of their things out. The Eagles did exactly what we asked them to do, which is put your rookie corners out there and let them learn so they're ready for the playoff time. And guess what?
Boy, did they learn.
They learned, and they might be some of the best rookie corners we have seen. And I'm saying this as a Cowboys fan and an Eagles hater. I can't stand the Eagles. But you know what? Those two kids are absolutely fantastic. And I don't even care that Cooper DeJean is what he is. He's a great corner. He's a great rookie corner.
What is
that's just what it is. All right? I don't care about White Boy Summer. It's none of that. This dude is just a good rookie corner. Quinyon Mitchell is a fantastic DB, and what he's able to do one-on-one on the outside has absolutely changed how the Eagles can defend, and it's everything they were hoping for. The fact Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is not really their starter anymore in safety is great because guess what? They finally figured out he sucks, and he's just out there to irritate the other team, and there's nobody on the Packers that's going to get mad at him. Like, nobody's going to punch him in the face this round. They're going to wait until next round throw him out there. But right now, I think the Eagles are all set up to match up against the Packers in a different way than they did in Brazil, where we're going to see an effective offense that has A.J. Brown engaged, that has Saquon flying out of the chutes like he's just a man possessed. Devontae, Dallas Goedert should get the ball more. It should be a team offensively that's effective if Jalen Hurts just plays the smart game and doesn't try to check down everything. Take a couple of shots, it's fine. And on the flip side, I don't know what Jordan Love did, but he forgot how to throw picks again, and it's great. It's great for the Packers. Yeah. So seeing the Packers and what they do, and Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love, these receivers, I pick one. They're all a weapon. Unfortunately, they're matched up against the best corners out there. At least probably the best corner defensive back room, I think, in the NFL right now. And that's just, I shouldn't say maybe the best, but like at least top three. And they're not number three. So yeah, I love this matchup because it is a fun matchup. It has the writings of being one of those matchups that you sit back and you think this is the best matchup of the playoffs. Like not the Super Bowl, not the championships. Like this feels like the best matchup, especially early on right now that we have.
This game is very weird for me because I picked the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl in our preseason predictions, and they've looked pretty much exactly what I said they would do to get there. The only, like pretty much to a T, how Saquon Barkley was going to sit and Kellen Moore were going to fix the offense. And we talked about how much I loved those rookie corners, even in our predictions. Quinyon Mitchell in the draft, Adam is the highest rated defensive player. We check the tapes and we could check our rankings. The fact that what was it, 19 other teams passed on him still infuriates me, including that team that picked a number 15. That on mock draft Mondays I told to take him for like 3 months straight. Would have helped things. I digress. He is awesome, and there's no doubts about it. We already know about the front seven. Zach Bond should be an all-pro. He should be an all-pro with what he's doing. I mean, 5 forced fumbles, top 4 in tackles, I believe. He's been incredible. We already know Carter, Nolan Smith. This is like our draft boards from the past 4 years coming to life, basically. That's what it looks like. The Eagles have listened to us, and it's paid off. And then offensively, Jalen Hurts is going to be out there, it looks like. Saquon Barkley, we already know about that. You got to imagine he's got to have a chip on his shoulder coming out, not getting a chance to break that record. I don't care what he says. He wanted that. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith's actually come alive a little bit the last few weeks, too. Everything points to the Eagles, but I got a feeling about the Packers. I don't know what it is. They're that team that's going to piss off all that. They beat the Eagles, they're going to the Super Bowl. I think if they beat the Eagles, they find a way to get through the NFC. I don't know how. I don't know why. And that's probably blasphemous. But somehow I feel like they would find a way to the Super Bowl if they get by the Eagles. I'm not willing to make that prediction yet, but I'm saying if they do, I'm coming back on the next show and saying, see, I told you. But if it doesn't happen, I'm going to say
at least.
That's true. And if they don't do it, I'm going to pretend I never said it. But if they do, I'm going to come back to this and say, I told you so. So that's going to lead me into the upset of the week. Packers find a way to get it done against the Eagles. They will cover that plus 5.5. I think they will win outright. Weirdly enough, their run defense allows 4 yards per carry, third lowest in the NFL, and fewer than 100 yards per game. They allowed fewer than 100 yards per game, so they were about 7th in the league. I'm a little worried about the lack of Jair Alexander for it, but they haven't had him in a long time anyway, and they've still been doing what they've been doing. Like he's played minimally this season anyway. They get after Rashawn Gary up front. That run game is so weirdly dynamic. Matt LaFleur is so good at designing just run games, the motions, the end arounds. When it comes to just designing run games, he is a mad genius. He makes Jordan Love's job so ridiculously easy. And as you said, he is cut down on throwing picks. The loss of Christian Watson does worry me a little bit. It's just that ability to just fly down the field like a gazelle, basically. He's the fastest guy on the field at any given moment. That I do miss that for him. I feel a lot more comfortable with it if they had him. But there's something about when the Packers are injured going into the playoffs that things work out too. Like their Super Bowl run, everybody was broken going into it. Defensively, offensively, they got it going. So we're going to take the Packers with the upset. If you don't want to touch that money line, I don't blame you. But plus 5.5, I think they'll find a way to cover that. Because I think they'll keep Saquon from going full Saquon. Kind of like they mostly did in that first game as well. Like Saquon's still going to Saquon, but don't let him say quads. Keep him as Saquon, not say quads. So that's my pick. The Packers cover plus 5.5. If you're feeling ballsy, touch that money line.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not going to be as confident as you in the Packers. I do agree with a lot.
I'm forcing you into it now. I'm leading you right.
Oh, I was already going to do it. I already sacrificed my own pride to. Well, I've already sacrificed my pride as a Cowboys fan, so we're good. But I guess whatever's left is I'm sacrificing it here. I agree with a lot of what you said about the Packers. I go back to what I said. I said about the Chargers, and I'll say it again. Run the ball, grind them out on defense. And right now in the NFC, as good as the Packers are doing both of those things, the Eagles are better at it. And that's where I'm going here, where the Eagles are going to be able to grind it out. And as you mentioned, Christian Watson is the only guy I would be really worried about taking the top off of the defense for the Eagles. And he's not going to play. Potentially not going to play, I should say.
No, he's out. That ACL's torn. He's done.
Yeah, so there you go. But yeah, with that being the case, I'm not as worried. I do get worried if they get their tight ends more involved with the Packers. But again, I'm not concerned as much as probably Eagles fans are, even with this matchup. I think the Eagles should win this and probably should win this comfortably. I'm thinking this is like a 10-point game type as well, where I think the Eagles can get off to a hot start. And I'm not going to say coast because you don't coast in the playoffs, but they're going to get to a good 2-touchdown, maybe even three-score game. And then it's going to be like, okay, let's just hold them defensively. They're going to make a couple mistakes here and there. The Packers are going to make a run, and then the Eagles are like, okay, hold on, we still have A.J. Brown, and then it's going to be A.J. Brown season. So give me the Eagles here to cover the spread and win the game. Minus 240 odds on winning, minus 5.5. And if this continues to separate for the spread, I'm going to keep riding with the spread until it gets to 10 points. So give me the Eagles here, especially with Jalen coming back.
Let me go and correct myself, too, because Saquon did actually score 3 touchdowns in that week 1 game. What I meant to say was he didn't unleash – he was at 24 carries for 109 yards. So he was still good. My point was he didn't do what he did to the Rams, where he had 10 carries for 1,000 yards. So I should preface that, too, trying to say he didn't go full Saquon. Technically, he did getting the 3 touchdowns. I meant he didn't fully dominate the game from pillar to post. He got cooking in that second half because remember the start of that game, it was Jordan Love throwing bombs to Jaden Reed out there somewhere. One gets called back, so he does it again. They were trading bombs to start the game, and then Saquon took over late. So just correcting myself there before the Eagles faithful comes after me. Don't want to be acting like I'm disrespecting here now. But we have a couple more games to get into. We'll cruise through these ones. Washington Commanders taking on the Bucs. The Bucs, the home team, minus 3.5-point favorite on this one. I think I'm going to keep mine short and sweet. I think the Bucs are a better team. I think they're at home. I think they're healthy. I love that we get Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore in the playoffs. I'm just going to presume those two are rejected, so I'm not counting those two. I think the Buccaneers' run game with Bucky Irving and Rashad White is going to find a way to get it done. Commanders' defense, while much improved, is still spotty. And when they played in week 1, too, we kind of saw the Buccaneers, and we've seen it periodically. When they get cooking, they are ridiculous. When Baker is in the kitchen, they're outstanding. So I'm going to take the Bucs. I think they will cover 3.5. I'm going to take the Bucs to win outright. Everything points to them in that offense. When it gets going, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like that offense, when it is cooking, it is absolutely insane. So give me the Bucs to cover, even though they destroyed DJ's best bets from going 4-0 in the last week of the season by not covering against the Saints. They'll cover here against the Commanders.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Baker Mayfield has never lost an NFL. The first NFL playoff game he plays each season, each time he's made it, he's only made it once. So right?
He's made it twice. He's 2-2. Because he made it last year with the Bucs too, and won against the Eagles. So he's 2-0 in Wildcard weekend.
Yeah, there you go. So give me the Commanders to win on this one. I'm gonna go Jaden Daniels with an upset. I just think why not? At this point in time, just continue. Yeah, continue this wild. I'm gonna pick the NFC East for everything because forget it. Why not? I love Baker. I love the Bucs. I just something feels special about Jaden Daniels, and it feels like he's gonna prove it in week 1. Or sorry, not week 1, Wild Card week. And then Terry McLaurin, despite the bad output in week 18, terrible output for me. Week 17. I still think there's a lot to come back here for the Commanders. So give me the Commanders to pull my upset for the week here and win this one.
Absolutely. It's a very fun matchup. Speaking of fun matchups, too, we'll get to the last matchup on Monday. I think this is the best one to put on Monday, too. The Vikings taking on the Rams. The 14-win Vikings is the 5th seed, having to go on the road to L.A. to take on the 10-win Rams. Minus 2.5-point favorites for Minnesota as well, with an over total set of 47.5. Vikings at minus 130, the Rams at plus 110. It's interesting because the Rams did beat them when they matched up earlier in the year, and they won pretty comfortably too. I think it was like 35-20. Matthew Stafford is such a seasoned and veteran, awesome quarterback that he can deal with Brian Flores' Floresness that destroys so many younger quarterbacks and so many guys that haven't seen it all necessarily, like those guys, the less seasoned quarterbacks, the less veteran quarterbacks, the less elite guys. But unfortunately, none of that applies to Matthew Stafford. And he's got Puka Nacua fully healthy, Cooper Kupp, I think, fully healthy, Kyron Williams, all of them coming off a full week of rest. I will say take the over. I will also say I'm still going to take the Vikings. No, I'm not. I'm taking the Rams. The Rams find a way to pull off the upset too. So give me the Rams. They cover plus 2.5. I think they find a way to squeak it out. Minnesota is awesome. Best coaching staff in the NFL. They got like 3 head coaches on that team. The NFC North has like 8 head coaches, and none of them are on the Bears. So I think that's how good that the Vikings are. But the Rams, they got some dudes themselves. Like they got some dogs over there too. Sean McVay, Even though he's like 10 years old, he's got a juggernaut of a coaching tree, which includes Kevin O'Connell. And he's got arguably the best quarterback in the NFC. Arguably. Very arguable there. In the NFC
Fair.
playoffs, I'll say at least. And you got arguably the best receiving room. Arguably. I like the Eagles a little bit more, but Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp's not too far behind. So I'm going to take the Rams to pull off the upset over the Vikings. I think they will crack the defense, and they'll get Sam Darnold just make that one or two mistakes, just enough to cost them. So give me the Rams to pull off the upset and cover a +2.5.
That's a fair assessment. I'm not going with the Rams because there's.
I can tell by
No, I'm not even.
Like, that's fair, but no.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'm not going to disagree. I think the Rams are one of those receiving core teams. Like, they are a fantastic receiving core. I think Matthew Stafford is a grizzled veteran. But you know what he struggles against usually is the NFC North. For some reason, he struggles against the NFC North, and especially the Vikings. Obviously beat him earlier this season, but that doesn't happen often in his career beforehand. And Sam Darnold in California has a little bit of a reputation of being a California kid when he comes to California to play. He's
Especially
a different, especially Southern California. Again, didn't happen earlier this season, but the odds that things in the NFL repeat themselves within a season are slim. It doesn't often happen from regular season to playoffs. So that said, I'm going Vikings.
I like it. You know, we got a little bit of variation in there too, so that makes it a little bit fun. So one of us is going to look really smart, or we're both going to look dumb. Somehow to find a way that we both look dumb. I don't know how, but it will find a way.
Ties in the playoffs somehow.
Somehow we'll get like pushes, even though we
power outage, just a random power outage.
You know what, Jim and John are playing on the same day, if I'm not mistaken. So you know what, that is very, very. You know what, they are playing on the same day. That might just happen. We're keeping an eye out there for sure. But that's what we got. Let us know in the comments down below who you guys are picking for the playoffs, what bets you really like.